Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. So today we're going to be talking about a fairly interesting magnifier. This one specifically is from Feyachi. It is their 1.5 to 5 variable zoom magnifier, which sounds really interesting. But before we get into this, I do just want to say that this one here was sent out to me for free by Feyachi, so I didn't have to pay for this. So keep that in mind when I'm talking about it. However, this is a fairly interesting magnifier in the fact that it is a variable magnifier, and also in terms of cost. This specific magnifier, I believe, is going for about $80, and there should actually be a link to this one here in the description below on Amazon. So first up, let's go ahead and talk about its features and its size. So it's actually a fairly bulky magnifier if you look at it. It is a 1.5 to 5. It's about 5 inches long. It technically has a 30mm objective lens, but the rear end of it is a big, it's very, very bulky, so it's a lot bulkier than a lot of other magnifiers on the market. It's much larger than, say, the Vortex VMX3, which is like $199 or $200, $150, somewhere in that range. And it's much, much larger than a lot of the higher end, like the EOTech ones and some other magnifiers on the market. So it's very, very large, and in that terms, it's also fairly heavy for its size, although not too heavy. It's a little bit heavier than the EOTech 512 that I have in front of it. But it also comes with a flip-to-side mount, which is fairly nice, and actually for the money is not bad. It's not the best flip-to-side mount in the world, but it's not terrible either. Now I have this one here set to flip to the left side, just because I was being very simple with it. I didn't need to change it to the other side. I don't mind having them on the left side, because normally I'm not looking through the optic the entire time, so it doesn't block my vision, only when I'm actually shooting and looking through the optic. So I've had this magnifier for about a month now, and most of the time it's been on this 9mm. This is my AR9 7.5 inch barrel, which actually recoils a little bit more than 5.56. It's a lot snappier, but I did also originally have this on my 10.5 5.56 with a different red dot, and it did just fine on there as well. In terms of total round count, it's somewhere between 600 and 800 rounds, which isn't a lot in terms of total rounds, but for a very inexpensive magnifier that people probably aren't shooting all that much to begin with, it's a good amount of rounds, and of course also a 9mm, which does kick a little bit more than 5.56. Now, under recoil, a lot of cheap magnifiers tend to wobble either forward and back or side to side in their mount. This one here, the mount on it is actually fairly decent, and it's held up okay. Now, I haven't done any sort of drop test on it because it's kind of an inexpensive optic, so I really didn't want to just drop it and break it and say, hey, look, it broke on a drop test, when it's not designed to be any sort of duty use application. So this one here doesn't really have much left to right wobble on there, but you'll see it in the video that I'll put in here in some slow-mo, is that when you fire, it does have some forward and back wobble. So that's where most of the wobble comes from, is forward and back, which in my opinion is a little better than side to side. Forward and back is a little bit easier because it always just resettles right on the optic, so you don't have any play left and right. Now let's go ahead and talk about the glass itself, because that is, as you can probably imagine, one of the letdowns of it, because it does have a lot of really high-end features, like a variable magnifier from 1.5 to 5 sounds extremely useful. It almost turns your red dot sight, or your holographic sight in this case, into a low power variable optic, you know, like your 1 to 6, your 1 to 5s, your 1 to 8s, that sort of thing. And this almost does that, except the execution of it, of course, for $80 is very, very poor. So on 1.5x right now, you actually have a very decent amount of eye relief. Like you're about, I don't know, 3.5, 4 inches back, which is very, very good. However, you tend to have a little bit of scope shadow in the middle. If you're looking in bright light, you'll actually see like a ring on the inside, which is a little bit jarring. It's not always there, but sometimes you do get a little bit of scope shadow inside the optic itself. And that being said, the 1.5x isn't really 1.5x. It's definitely more like 2x. So it's definitely more of like a 2 to 5 or 2 to 4.5 magnifier. Not really a 1.5 to 5. So it's not actually as versatile as it seems. Now, when you rack it all the way up to 5x, which is just a 90-degree throw, so it's a very short little throw on there with this big rubber chunk here, which is actually fairly tactile. It has really good knurling on it, but again, we'll get to the issue with 5x in just a second. So at 5x, the eye relief shortens down to basically a EOTech of about 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches, but generally on the shorter side there, so you have to choke up a really long way. So if you're used to shooting it on 1.5 and you have to switch it over to 5, or in this case back over to 5, you got to choke up a long ways to get any sort of sight picture. Now, The glass quality itself is very dark and it's very soft. So nothing is really very sharp or very clear when looking through the optic, which is a really big issue. Red dot magnifiers work really, really well on really high precision red dots or holographic, such as this EOTech with a 1 MOA center dot. So in theory, what you should be getting with a red dot magnifier is you should be allowing you to extend your maximum range. However, for most people, I would say with a red dot, their maximum range is about 300 yards, which is probably much longer than they'll ever need to take a shot. But even if they don't need to take a shot, a red dot magnifier can help them to get better target ID, to see the target a little bit better, and so to increase your hit probability at longer range. However, with this, on my 10.5, I took it out to 300 yards with the red dot magnifier on there and a different 2 MOA red dot, so not quite as precise as this guy. And what we ended up finding was that we had the same hit probability with just the red dot, just the 2 MOA red dot, than we did with the 2 MOA red dot and the magnifier. And with the 2 MOA red dot, of course, you have a red dot, so you have infinite eye relief, and you're just looking through that and finding your target and putting the dot on it. Then when you add in a magnifier, especially if you have really short eye relief, depending on your position, if you're prone, you have to get your head in a really awkward position to be able to see your target, versus if you just have a clear open sight plane, you can have your head anywhere in that box and you're going to be able to see and shoot the target. Also, on top of that, something about this magnifier specifically is because the further you go up in magnification, the tighter and more harsh that eye box becomes, and the less image quality you get looking through the glass. Generally speaking, I always ran it on 1.5x, or really 2x is what it really is, because 1.5x is a big jump. It's not just a little jump, 1.5x is a big jump, so it's much closer to 2, if not a little bit more than that. So basically, all the times that I was running the magnifier on it, I was always running it on its lowest magnification setting, where I had the most eye relief. And even with it on its lowest magnification, 2x really does help at about like 50 yards and beyond. It's a lot faster because you're not having to find a very small target with a very small dot, and it really helps to bring that target into focus. So it is definitely usable in that like 50 to 150 yard range when standing, but if you get prone or you're trying to do really odd positions, that magnifier can really start to hurt you, because now you have to cant and find your right eye relief to be able to see the target, versus just having your holographic and you can see as much as you want to. And that really leads into another discussion about inexpensive or budget magnifiers in general. In my opinion, unless you have a really high quality magnifier that works, the mount is really good on it, the glass is really good, the eye relief is good, and it fits what you need on your gun. If you really need that extra hit capability, the extra target identification at longer range, that sort of thing, 99% of the time, if not 100% of the time, you're going to be better without a magnifier, especially without a budget magnifier, because a budget magnifier, it attempts to solve one issue, which is not having any magnification with your red dot or holographic, and it introduces about 4 or 5 other problems. For instance, in this case, you have bad eye relief, or eye relief that changes depending on where you're looking at it. You have bad glass quality. So you go from a very clear EOTech to now a very brownish tinted soft glass on the magnifier. You also now have a wobbly mount that may or may not hold up. And really, this goes for almost any budget magnifier, not just this one in particular. For instance, even the Vortex, the VMT3 or whatever one that is, the one that's like 150 to 200 bucks, I've owned a couple of those and I've always ended up selling them, because they do just introduce more problems than they fix. And so in the long run, I really don't think that it's worth it. And honestly, like I said, hitting targets at 300 yards with a red dot is fairly easy, especially if you know what you're doing on any sort of 5.56, 300 blackout build. They're very, very easy to do, and you don't really have any issues with that. So unless you, for a very specific use case, need a magnifier, I would always recommend either just not going with one or buying a high quality one that doesn't introduce all those other problems. Now, there's always downsides with magnifiers. For instance, you're always going to have to fight for eye relief, and your glass quality may not be the best. You got to have a really good mount on it. So even if you have a really nice magnifier, there is still some issues that are introduced by adding a magnifier. But generally speaking, I don't think budget magnifiers make any sense whatsoever. Now, if you were using this on like a varmint gun or something like that, you'd be better off just having a high magnification scope for varmint hunting than you would having a red dot and a magnifier, which is much more expensive than just buying a cheap high magnification scope on your 22, 5.56, or whatever else that you're varmint hunting with. So now, all that being said, I don't find the Feyachi 1.5 to 5 a horrible optic. It does just introduce a lot of downsides and a lot of drawbacks to your fairly simple red dot system. So that being said, I really don't think it's worth it for any sort of serious application, for any sort of varmint hunting application. So really, unless it's just a fun, gun that you just really want to have a magnifier on and you think it looks cool, there's not really a purpose to owning one. So yes, I got this one here for free. No, I don't really like it, and so I will actually be ending up giving it away to whoever, if somebody chooses this upper in the giveaway, which actually ends the day this video gets up. So if you're seeing this video and it's Saturday, the first day that it's up, you need to enter the giveaway by liking the picture of the Iliad on my Instagram or sending me an email, whichever one is easier for you. So that is pretty much it for the Feyachi 1.5 to 5x magnifier. It's not all that great, though again, for 80 bucks, there's really not a whole lot to complain about. So, all that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Of course, if you want to help out the channel in any way, you can like, share, subscribe, and in the description, I think I have my PayPal for donations or tips or whatever you want to do, and I also have a Subscribestar open, which is essentially a pro to a Patreon. It's essentially identical to Patreon, and there's going to be monthly giveaways there, so if you sign up there, there's only going to be a few people for the first few months, so you're pretty much guaranteed to get something. So, all that being said, once again, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace off.
Hey you. Yeah, you. What are you still doing here? The video's over. Wait. Why are you still here? Like, share, and subscribe. Or don't. The choice is yours. But if you do subscribe, thanks. And I like pizza. Peace off.
There you go. Did not see. There you go. There you go.